want you to believe it's about faith. But I uncovered the truth behind the 4:44 a.m. prayer, and it has nothing to do with miracles. It's about neuroscience. Have you ever noticed how your family always struggled with money? How your parents, your grandparents, and probably you now have always battled financially? That's not a coincidence. And it's definitely not bad luck. It's inherited neural programming. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered this 15 years ago. She was a behavioral neuroscientist studying the brain patterns of families trapped in chronic poverty. What she found changed everything we know about money and the mind. But first, let me tell you something that'll unsettle you. Your mind was programmed to reject money before you were even born. This happens through what scientists call epigenetic inheritance. The financial traumas of your ancestors physically altered the DNA passed down to you. Sound absurd? I'll prove it. In 2018, a University of Zurich study analyzed descendants of Great Depression survivors. They discovered these individuals had specific brain patterns. Regions of the brain associated with few and scarcity were hyperactive. Regions linked to risk-taking and opportunity were underdeveloped. Their DNA had been physically altered by their ancestors' experience of poverty. Now imagine this happening for generations in your family. Kathryn Kuhlman knew there was a specific window where this pattern could be broken. A moment when the brain was more plastic, more receptive to reprogramming. She began studying circadian rhythms and brainwaves. What she discovered will leave you speechless. Between 4:30 and 5 a.m., something extraordinary happens in your brain. You naturally enter what neuroscientists call a deep theta state. This is when brainwaves slow to 4 to 8 hertz. In this state, the barrier between conscious and subconscious practically disappears. It's as if someone opened a direct doorway to the deepest programming of your mind. But here's what no one tells you about this time. 4:44 a.m. isn't a mystical number. It's the exact moment when 3 neurological factors align perfectly. Cortisol is still low. Melatonin is transitioning, and the prefrontal cortex hasn't yet taken over, controlling your analytical mind. You are literally in a window of neural vulnerability. Kathryn Kuhlman decided to test a radical hypothesis. What if it were possible to use this window to overwrite inherited financial patterns? What if prayer was actually a disguised neural reprogramming technique? She recruited 50 people from families with a history of generational poverty. All had similar brain patterns: excessive fear of risk, financial self-sabotage, deeply ingrained limiting beliefs about money. The protocol was simple, but specific. Every day at 4:44 a.m., they had to perform a particular sequence of affirmations. Not traditional prayers, targeted neurological commands. Phrases designed to directly access the subconscious and install new patterns. The results were unsettling. After just 21 days, brain scans showed physical changes. The regions associated with fear decreased in activity. The areas linked to decision-making and opportunity became more dense. It was as if they had physically rewired their brains. But that was just the beginning. 6 months later, as if an invisible barrier had been removed, Kathryn Kuhlman wasn't seeing behavioral changes. She was seeing epigenetic reversal in real time. The programming of poverty that had been passed down for generations was being literally overwritten. Here's what strikes me most about this discovery. It's not about faith. It's not about energy. It's about precise neurological timing and specific language that accesses deep layers of mental programming. The 4:44 a.m. prayer works because it's applied neuroscience, but not everyone who tries gets results. And there's a scientific reason for that. Your brain has defense mechanisms. When you try to change deep-seated patterns, it activates what neuroscientists call homeostatic resistance. It's like a security system that protects existing programming. That's why most attempts at financial change fail. You're fighting against neural circuits that have been strengthened for decades or even generations. Without the correct timing and specific approach, these circuits always win. But at 4:44 a.m., that resistance is temporarily deactivated. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered that there's a specific sequence of words that completely bypasses this defense system. These are generic affirmations. They're neurological commands based on how the subconscious processes language during the theta state. Each word was chosen for its ability to exact specific circuits. Each phrase was constructed to install new patterns without activating resistance. It's like having a master key to the deepest programming of your mind. When Kathryn Kuhlman published her findings, the scientific community was divided. Some called it revolutionary, others too controversial. She had discovered a way to literally break generations of limiting programming using only precise timing and specific language. What's most fascinating is that this explains why certain spiritual practices work. It's not magic. It's neuroscience we don't yet fully understand. Ancient traditions intuitively discovered windows of neural vulnerability. They created rituals that worked, but didn't know exactly why. Kathryn Kuhlman brought science to what was once only intuition. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is this sequence? How does it work in practice? And more importantly, why do some people manage to break generational poverty and others remain trapped in the same patterns? The answer will surprise you, because it doesn't just depend on the words you use. It depends on how your brain is processing those words. And there's a specific preparation that determines whether the reprogramming will work or not. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered that success depends on 3 neurological factors that occur before you even begin the protocol. And if any of them are out of place, the entire process fails. That's why most people try similar techniques and see no results. They don't know how to prepare their brains to receive the new programming. Have you ever tried meditating early in the morning and felt your mind become calmer, more receptive? That's no coincidence. You were naturally accessing a specific neurological state, but there are ways to intensify that state to make it deeper and more effective for lasting change. Kathryn Kuhlman developed a preparatory protocol that takes only 3 minutes. 3 simple techniques that put your brain in the ideal. The first technique regulates your breathing in a specific way. It's not ordinary breathing. It's a pattern that synchronizes brain waves and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This reduces cortisol and increases neuroplasticity. The second technique uses body temperature, a small change that activates specific receptors in the brain and intensifies the deep theta state. The third technique is about physical positioning. How you position your body determines which neural circuits become more active. Together, these three techniques create what Kathryn Kuhlman calls a state of maximum neural receptivity. It's in this state that the 4:44 a.m. protocol becomes a tool for deep reprogramming. But here's something that will intrigue you even more. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered that there's a specific pattern of results. The changes don't happen randomly. They follow a predictable sequence that reflects how the brain processes new programming. First, you notice changes in your perception. Opportunities that previously went unnoticed begin to grab your attention. It's as if a mental filter has been removed. Then, your decision-making patterns change. You find yourself making choices that previously seemed too risky, but now they flow naturally. Finally, external reality begins to reflect the new internal programming. This usually happens between the 3rd and 6th week. Most impressively, these changes tend to be permanent because you're not just changing behaviors, you're altering the very neural structure that generates those behaviors. It's fundamental reprogramming, not superficial. Kathryn Kuhlman tested this with hundreds of people over 5 years. The pattern was consistent. Those who followed the complete protocol saw lasting changes. Those who skipped steps or didn't understand the science behind it saw the difference lay in understanding that this is applied neuroscience, not magic. When you understand that you're working with specific neural circuits, you can optimize the process. When you think it's about faith or energy, you become dependent on factors you can't control. Kathryn Kuhlman transformed a mystical process into a precise mental technology, and that changes everything about how we think about personal transformation and breaking limiting beliefs. Her parents worked their entire lives in jobs that barely paid the bills. She was a neuroscientist, but she earned a modest academic salary. She lived in the same pattern of scarcity her family always had. For 6 months, she rigorously followed her own protocol. What happened next defied her own scientific expectations. 3 weeks after starting, she received an unexpected offer for private consultations, something she had never considered before. 6 weeks later, an investor sought her out to fund her research. In 4 months, her income had tripled. But the most surprising thing wasn't the money. It was the ease with which it happened. Decisions that had previously paralyzed her now flowed naturally. Opportunities she couldn't even see before appeared constantly. It was as if she had developed a new ability to navigate the financial world. Kathryn Kuhlman was experiencing firsthand the reversal of inherited programming. When she published the complete results, something unexpected happened. Investors began to seek her out, not because of the research, but because of the financial results she had demonstrated using her own technique. Within 2 years, Kathryn Kuhlman became a neural performance consultant for high-level executives and entrepreneurs. Ironic, isn't it? The scientist who studied poverty became an expert on wealth by applying her own discovery. Now, let me tell you exactly how this protocol works in practice. First, you need to understand that it's not just about waking up at 4:44 a.m. It's about creating a specific sequence that prepares your brain and then installs new programming. The complete protocol has 5 distinct phases. Phase 1, specific respiratory regulation. You need to do what Kathryn Kuhlman calls reverse 4-7-8 breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale for 8. But the inversion is in the mental counting. Instead of counting numbers, you mentally repeat, "I choose abundance" during inhalation. "I deserve prosperity" during retention. "I release limitations" during exhalation. This isn't self-help. It's targeted subliminal programming during a state of maximum receptivity. You do this for 3 minutes. It's enough time to synchronize brainwaves and activate neuroplasticity without generating homeostatic resistance. Phase 2, neural thermal activation. This is the part that no one else teaches. You need to create a specific thermal contrast. Wash your face with cold water for 30 seconds. This activates the vagus nerve and intensifies the theta state. Then, sip small amounts of warm water. The alternation between cold and heat creates a pattern of neural activation that prepares the brain to receive new programming. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered this by studying the rituals of Siberian tribes who used thermal alternation for altered states of consciousness. Phase 3, optimized neural positioning. Sit facing east. This isn't mysticism, it's neuroscience. Directional orientation subtly affects brain activity through Earth's magnetic fields. Keep your spine straight, but relaxed. Hands resting on your thighs, palms up. This position optimizes cerebral blood flow and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Eyes closed, but not tense. Facial muscles completely relaxed. This physical position is crucial. It determines which neural circuits become more active. You'll repeat a sequence of 5 affirmations, each one crafted using principles of neuro-linguistic programming and cognitive neuroscience. I am the first generation of my family to live in complete abundance. My mind now accepts and attracts constant prosperity. I make decisions that multiply resources and opportunities. My value is abundantly recognized and rewarded by the world. I now break all limiting patterns of my lineage. Each phrase targets a specific neural circuit. The first breaks identification with familiar patterns. The second reprograms perceptual filters. The third installs new decision-making patterns. The fourth works with self-respect and self-worth. The fifth solidifies the change as permanent. You repeat each phrase 3 times, pausing 5 seconds between each repetition. The 2 slow, and you exit the theta state. Phase 5, neural anchoring of the new programming. Here's what sets this protocol apart from amateur attempts. You need to physically anchor the new programming. Gently press the center of your chest with your fingertips. While repeating one last time, This programming is now integrated into every cell of my being. Then, rub your palms together until they're warm and place them over your eyes for 30 seconds. This activates specific neurons that consolidate long-term memory. You're literally welding the new programming into your neural structure. The complete protocol takes exactly 21 minutes. Not 20, not 25, exactly 21 minutes. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered this is the ideal time for deep reprogramming without triggering mental defense mechanisms. But here's something she only discovered after years of application. The protocol evolves as you apply it. In the first 3 weeks, you're breaking resistance and installing new programming. From the 4th to the 8th week, you're refining and strengthening the new circuits. From the 3rd month onward, you're expanding and optimizing. Each phase requires minor adjustments to the protocol. For example, after the 1st month, you add a 6th personalized affirmation based on your specific changes. After the 2nd month, you might reduce the breathing preparation to 2 minutes because your brain is already conditioned. It's a progressive system, not static. Kathryn Kuhlman documented that people who treat this as a rigid recipe have limited results. People who understand the science behind it and adapt as they evolve have exponential results. The protocol becomes more powerful the more you understand its mechanisms. Now, you must be wondering about the practical results. What exactly changed in the lives of people who consistently applied this? The reports are consistent, but astonishing. Maria, 34, came from a family with 3 generations of financial hardship. After 8 weeks of the protocol, she was promoted to a position she didn't even know existed at her company. Her income increased by 170%. Carlos, 41, had been unemployed for 6 months. In the 5th week of the protocol, he not only found a job, but negotiated a salary 40% higher than he earned before. Amanda, 28, had a small shop that barely survived. After 3 months of applying the technique, she expanded to 2 new locations and tripled her revenue. The pattern is always similar. First, changes in perception and decision-making. Then, unexpected opportunities. Finally, tangible results that multiply. But here's what strikes me most in these cases. None of these people made dramatic changes in their external behavior. They didn't go around desperately handing out resumes or completely changing their strategies. The changes happened internally, first, in their neural programming. The external world simply reflected the new internal programming. It's as if they changed the frequency at which they operated, and reality began to respond to this new frequency. Kathryn Kuhlman explains this through what she calls neuroeconomic coherence. When your internal programming is aligned with abundance, you naturally perceive and act on opportunities that previously went unnoticed. It's not that the world changed, it's that you developed a new ability to navigate the world that always existed. But here's an even more fascinating discovery. Kathryn Kuhlman began studying what happened to the children of people who applied the protocol. children who grew up in families where one parent had broken the inherited poverty programming. These children demonstrated completely different neural patterns. They naturally had a higher risk tolerance, better ability to identify opportunities, a healthier relationship with money. As if they had inherited the new programming, not the old one. Kathryn Kuhlman was observing generational poverty breaking in real time. One generation broke the pattern. The next generation was already born with abundance programming. This means that when you apply this protocol, you're not just changing your own life. You're altering the behavioral DNA that will be passed down to your children and grandchildren. You are literally creating a new family lineage. Pause. Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of what I've just told you. Because what I'm about to reveal will connect all of this in a way you never expected. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered that there's a hidden pattern behind all families that manage to build generational wealth. All of them, at some point in history, had someone who unconsciously broke the poverty programming through practices that activated the exact same neural mechanisms. Wealthy families aren't wealthy by accident. They're wealthy because at some point in their lineage, someone reprogrammed the family's behavioral DNA. And now you know the exact science of how to do this consciously. The 4:44 a.m. protocol is just the vehicle. The real power lies in the targeted neural reprogramming that happens when you understand the mechanisms behind it. You're not just trying a spiritual technique. You're applying cutting-edge neuroscience to break inherited programming and install abundance patterns that will be passed down to future generations. This is the difference between temporary change and permanent transformation. Between breaking your personal poverty and breaking the poverty of your entire family lineage. Kathryn Kuhlman transformed a mystical concept into a precise neural reprogramming technology. And now you have access to the same science Kathryn Kuhlman used to break 5 generations of financial limitations in her own family. The question isn't if this works. The research has proven it works. The question is, are you ready to be the first generation in your family to experience true abundance? Because once you break the programming, there's no going back. Your children, grandchildren, and future generations will inherit abundance. Not you're changing your family lineage forever. And it all starts tomorrow at 4:44 a.m. with 21 minutes that could alter the course of generations.